But axing entire products or business units, that was very odd in my mind, very odd.
The thing that caught my eye, I believe you had posted something on LinkedIn about layoffs. And when I saw that, I said, okay, this was a couple months, maybe like a month or two ago when there was a bunch of layoffs in the news, I think at the beginning of the year. And I said, I want to talk with him about his thoughts on what's going on in the tech industry regarding layoffs.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because one, I'm kind of reaping the benefits of it. Sorry, I'm moving around and getting a little blurry there, but through those posts, I've had 20 plus former Amazon engineers reach out, and we just had a guy sign today, former SD3, which is an awesome win for us. And we're putting on another offer for a former Amazon engineer here shortly. But it's kind of what I thought was intriguing was the timing that all of them did it. And if you look, I mean, you've been in this industry a long time, you see how expensive engineering resources are getting, and talk about inflation, right? That's hurting businesses like ours because, a smaller company, smaller revenue company can't compete with that type of compensation. We can't, right? Whether it comes with, almost free benefits, all the stuff that they do in the offices, full remote, you name it. Small businesses can't compete for that. And so that makes it very difficult now for anybody else to get a competitive advantage and hire really talented engineers because everyone thinks they're that valuable, right? And earlier, come last year, if you recall, Amazon had finally made a commitment to increase total compensation. It was right around when they did the 20-for-1 stock split. And I thought that interesting as well, because they had been so balanced on, ownership, set base, a little bit of a sign-on bonus spread over the first couple of years, and then everything else is all equity. And then they were changing that and, finally bumping people's salaries up because they too were having a hard time maintaining their current engineering talent as well as, competing in the industry because it had somewhat become a rinse and repeat. You bounce between, the Amazons, the Metas, the Facebooks, the Googles, or the Microsofts, the Googles. And so all of a sudden then, sharp turn left, it's like, wait, let's let go of all this stuff. And it's very odd to me because there was really no rhyme or reason. So I know from actually former employees of mine, you're talking senior managers and above, SD3s, which are, somewhat unicorns, right, in the industry, and they're being let go and they're not even trying to repurpose them. So it seemed like it was, I don't want to say unplanned, but it was certainly not like calculated. And they were just killing off business units, if you will, because there was a lot of Alexa layoffs as well. And I found that interesting too, because, Amazon had always prided itself on having engineers and anybody at the company have that option of, come here, join a team, and then stay with us because you can switch jobs everywhere. So it's I'm kind of giving you all the backstory because I feel like it was in a way, Amazon saying, you know what, engineers, we got to take back control of this situation and we've got to kind of like reduce the overall cost of this type of talent. I think it, and again, a little bit of a conspiracy theory. I'm going to throw that out there, but I do think it has a correlation to that because the talent's getting too expensive. And, everybody in that industry, everybody on the left coast, if you will, is starting to leverage everyone else and everybody else's offers, to jump ship. And so I do think that in a way it was like them kind of setting a recalibration because it was a lot of engineering talent that got let go. It wasn't like, peanut butter spread across different roles and the like.
So it wasn't entire products. They just ditched mostly engineers within different products?
From what I see, it was entire products, but it was mostly engineers in those products because the majority of the talent in those product lines is engineers. And so, and again, like I said, there wasn't a real good justification. It wasn't, a lot of, for example, a lot's been talked about in the press about how Amazon does their review process, and kind of the ranking system. And look, everybody does this. It's just everybody wants to pick on Amazon, and it would have made more sense if they took that model to reduce staff, basically saying, hey, we've got a certain amount of top tier, we've got a certain amount of middle talent, and then let's look at this reduced tier of folks and go back to each of the organizations and kind of say, hey, here's what you need to do. But axing entire products or business units, that was very odd in my mind. Very odd.
In my mind, it's not odd at all.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more.
Because I would just look at the P&L and see how different products are doing. And if I have to make cuts, then I'm just going to pull up the P&L and say, cut the things that are underperforming. If they were performing well and they cut, that would be interesting, right? If the product was profitable and they cut it instead of cutting a less profitable product, that might be kind of interesting.
Yeah. I just thought the part about it that I thought was, that I thought interesting. It wasn't, stopping and doing things that weren't producing value. That I get, and I agree with you on that. It was not looking at the good, like the top talent that remained in those verticals to ensure that, wait a second, we're not just killing a business unit and losing the talent. So I had SDE3 recs open for 2 years. At Amazon and wasn't able to hire them.
So them keeping, because I'm tracking with you. First of all, I'm agreeing with you on a lot of things. First of all, I love a good conspiracy. Secondly, I've got my own sort of conspiracy about why they did it from my perspective. But I like that you mentioned about these recs and being open and them not keeping talent. So when I think about that, I'm like, all right, they made these cuts and they didn't choose to be particular about keeping their top talent. And that says to me that it was, somewhat of an emergency, like a quick reaction to something. And so then I think, okay, well, what's the quick reaction to? Well, from my perspective, for the government was giving us so much money to keep certain employees. Mm-hmm. It's literally called the ERC, Employee Retention Credit.
Yep.
They just give you massive tax breaks on your payroll tax, and they'll actually give it back to you. Very rarely does this happen in the tax code, but they'll actually give you back the check or credit it towards payroll taxes, which is a huge deal. So they were doing that for 2 years, maybe more, and then they stopped it, right? At the same time, you have the Fed increasing interest rates because too many people have too many jobs.
Yep.
So what I think happened, it's my conspiracy, is that these executives sat up there and they said, because this is what I would do if I were in their position, right? They said, look, we're losing all this tax credit, so we have to rebalance our budgets because we're losing a huge chunk of cash that's going to come in because, I don't know, for most of the businesses, I would argue that human capital is the greatest expense.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So now you're going to lose this huge credit against keeping all these people. So then you have to figure it out. So that's one incentive. Another incentive is the Fed keeps raising interest rates, excuse me, under the argument that the job market's too hot.
Yep.
And then the third reason is these engineers are just crazy because this has gone nuts. I never planned, Brian, when I joined the economy, essentially, it was around 2009 when the real estate crash happened.
Yeah.
So I got this specific view that it was, you have a bunch of talent and then you just have to figure out what to do with that talent.
Yeah.
Right. I never thought my business would face struggles of just everyone's paying everyone more. And so I can't keep people because the moment they start, they get a better offer somewhere else. And then you can't even get anything done. And I never thought that my business would struggle. And it did a few years ago with the idea that I just can't retain them, not because of culture or because of benefits, just because of straight pay, just the amount of pay they'll get.
Yeah.
And so that hurts. So those are all my things. I think your conspiracy is part of like a triple incentivized conspiracy, right? Reduce the head count so that makes the Fed happy.
Yeah.
Right. Reduce the head count because you're losing your federal credits anyways. And that's a huge chunk of change. And then, reduce it to keep the engineers' salaries in better alignment.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that you said. I wasn't aware of the ERC, but yeah, given the amount of people that they employ, that's obviously a significant payday, right?
Yes.
Losing that essential free income, it certainly can hit people. And there was a little bit of that before, like right when you came in, because at that point in time, um, the administration then had reduced payroll taxes as well. And it went over the
Oh,
course of like 2 or 3 years. And that was both for the payroll tax, like the employer, as well as it reduced the employees' contributions. So we were all making more money. And that was because of, the economy at that point in time. So I do remember, like even personally, I remember, crap, I'm gonna start paying more again. I don't really like this. So yeah, from an employer side, when your human capital expenses as much as all of their companies are, that's definitely a hit. And the returns for them as a business are not what they were. It's not a guarantee anymore. You know, when you went in, most of your compensation was based off of 20% growth year over year, and you know that's not happening anymore. And frankly, like I said, it's been a benefit of me in my position as a former Amazon leader to then, have that outreach and say, hey, look, we're a growing startup company. We're doing great things that are actually helping people. You're not gonna, and this is a little bit arrogant to say, but I'm gonna say it, you're not building software to ship boxes of things to people. I'm one of those people that accept those boxes and buy a bunch of stuff that I don't necessarily need. But you can join us and you can actually build software that's bridging communication gaps, globally between people who really need it. And I see what I'm seeing when I'm talking to these engineers is they really want to get back into having meaningful work. And that's not to disregard anything that the tech companies are doing, but at the end of the day, there's something tangibly, there's a big tangible result that impacts people's lives for, your contributions as a software engineer here at Propio. You can't necessarily say that for the FANG stocks any longer. And so it's not to say that their growth and, their peak has happened. I just think that, certain generations are seeing more value in the result and the impact of what they do, not just the result. And that's where, that's where we come in. That's where my passion is. That's why I'm here. I came to Propio from AWS because I wanted to be bringing value to a company that one valued me, but also was doing something different in the world that helped people. And you've seen, I've since 2010, it's Amazon or healthcare tech in some way or fashion. And that's the pull. Like, I want to build software. I want to be a part of something that really helps people, because that's the area that we don't really pay attention to. If you think about all the population, and there's even articles today. Actually, there was an article specifically about Amazon Clinic and how that could potentially change, how we're doing telehealth and the cost of telehealth and things like that. But it's an industry that has not ever really had disruption in terms of technology at a grand scale. And it's the industry that really needs the technology to disrupt the status quo. So I love being a part of this, and that's a big pitch that I give to the engineers. Be it product engineers, quality engineers, software security engineers. That's the pitch that I give them. That's why it's different. That's why you want to come work here.
And so what is the problem that you're solving there?
So, with our diversified population, there's 300 plus languages in the US. And, when you have a high volume of immigrant population and English is not their primary language, we sell to clients who need that intermediary, who need a real-time interpreter. We need to be able to help make sure that in a legal situation, in a medical situation, that what you're hearing is understandable. It's not a matter of you trying to listen to a provider or a legal specialist for that regard, or in education. That's another one of our big verticals. Tell you what's going on and not really comprehending it. So we make that available through, it's really point and click. You see your language, you click on audio, you click on video. On an average of 15 seconds, we have a live interpreter there for you. We support over 350 different languages, including American Sign Language. And we do that through a global certified interpreter population. So they're medically certified. Their understanding of HIPAA, everybody's under, compliance and regulatory coverage. And, we make people's lives easier so that if they're hearing, a diagnosis or, talking about care, they hear it in their natural language. We also give them the ability to add additional family or friend participants to the call. So, if it's your mom or you need a sibling, or your mom needs a daughter or son to be on, we give that option as well. So that way we can have more of a family situation, everybody hearing what's happening all at the same time.
Yeah, I love that, especially because my brother and stepmom are physicians. And growing up, she ran the ER in Largo. You used to live in Florida. So
yep.
She ran the ER for Largo for like 20 years.
Nice.
And I got to go there after school from time to time. And you're exactly right. It's just a mix mash. And even when I was doing a project a few years ago, I was researching, I was surprised by this. I don't know the percentages, but I was doing some research for marketing about what countries had the highest population percentage-wise of people who spoke English. And I just remember, I don't know what number it was, but it was not in the top 10.
Yeah.
the United States was not in the top 10. And I was blown away by that. I think it was like 26 or something. But that was so surprising. And so I love what you guys are doing. I'm glad our show got pushed because I actually went to the emergency clinic on... I think Saturday or Sunday. What was the Super Bowl? Sunday? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We were driving back and we stopped at a Buc-ee's to get gas and stuff. And my wife's like, hey, can you check on the baby? Because we took 2 cars. So I got out of my car, went over to open the door for the baby because she was in, gas station. And something got in my eye. So something from the wind, it blew like a grain of sand or like a small grain of something into my eye, and I couldn't see. And it was this, my wife's like, yeah, you got this like bump under your eyelid and it's like something's in there. And I was like, oh my goodness. So obviously this is at the worst possible time, right? We're traveling back. We're in a city we don't know. Yeah. We're in, I think it's Atlanta or something. And so, I get in her car and she drives me to the closest, what are they called? Like urgent care?
Urgent care. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get there and I'm having to explain it, to them about like what's going on. And when you were describing what you do, I was sitting there thinking like, wow, I'm so lucky. I walked into a place that spoke English, because if I were in maybe France or Germany or some other place, to explain to them what's going on and how my eye got hurt and what's going on. And then they looked at it and all this stuff. And that would have been so difficult and so challenging. And luckily everything was okay.
It's amazing because, I've got 3 kids. You've got a couple of kids, right?
3.
And you reflect back and you think about, when you're in those situations, you're not very clear, right? Your mind is not on answering or hearing every single thing that the provider is trying to tell you. And they're asking the same things over and over and over again. And it's really CYA. But there's times where you don't understand, right? Like what they're saying. And you go, Doc, talk to me in English, and so you're like, break it down to me so I understand it. So just having that ability to say, I don't really understand what you're saying, you need to break it down further, is something we have to do all the time. I mean, we do that every day. It could be our friend explaining something that they do at work that we just don't understand. It could be your boss, it could be anybody. But in a medical situation or in a legal situation or an educational situation, it's exponentially harder. And so when I put myself in that and I think of all the times that I've had to say, I don't get it, right? It's like, damn, if you don't speak English, can you imagine being in that position where, certain like English speakers don't get it? And so, it's an amazing benefit we provide. Plus, what I didn't actually know until I began working with Propio is, hospital systems are required to have on-staff interpreters. And and Medicaid and Medicare, if it's coded right, they cover interpretation as a part of the quality of care. And so I didn't even know that. I didn't realize that whatsoever. And as a part of what we're doing now, we're helping hospital systems partner with us to keep their on-staff interpreters, um, functioning at all times. So raising their capacity. So we have this program called Interpreter Rewards Program, where if you're a client of ours and you have your own interpretive staff, we'll put you on our platform and we'll prioritize your interpretive staff first. Let you fill the request. You're on our portal, and that comes at basically no charge. And then if they can't handle it, we handle your overfill, and that helps your staff, be as maxed out in capacity as possible. And we're also building out a SaaS offering for workforce and capacity management for both on-site and remote interpretive staff to sell directly to health systems. And that just opens up their ability to make sure that all of their members, everyone that's being given care, is taken care of in terms of, having that availability for their natural language speaker. So it even gets more expansive to where, we can help other hospital systems maintain their capacities and basically lower their costs in terms of their interpretive staff. That doesn't even come into play. Like, we have a translation component of our business. So we're doing document translation. We do 50,000 different projects a year on document translation. We do websites in real time. We do manuals, any type of document that you might need translated into. We do that at over 125 different languages. So we're a full service language provider. And it's, like I said, building software for that, it matters. It's a lot of fun when you see the results of and the impact of what we're doing. Because I look at data all day, and to see the increase in our fill rates, to make sure that we're connecting clients to their preferred language, and we're making sure we're connecting it on the channel that they requested, whether it's video or audio, and we're seeing the results because of the length of the calls. We know that there's a positive interaction happening. That's fantastic. And then from like a quality assurance standpoint, we built our own internal quality assurance application. So we do essentially like a real-time stream. It's restricted access to supervisors and quality assurance folks on the interpretive side. And they randomly check in on recorded audio to ensure that the interpreter quality is at the bar that we expect it to be. And then in addition to that, we've built a full 360-degree view from a dashboard standpoint that pulls in network, jitter, packet loss, round trip time, so latency, and then correlates that against insight data that Twilio publishes per call into a centralized dashboard. So we know what clients are having difficulties, what interpreters are having potential difficulties in terms of just like things that are out of their control. We have region-based heat maps that are telling everybody, where we could potentially have problems. So it gives our interpreter relations organization the ability to do outreach and predict when we're going to have issues. So it's been a fun time. Comparing this back to 21 months ago when I first joined, it's a completely different company already, and it's been a blast working with them. Yeah, correct. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're 25 years old this year. And that's amazing to me because I look at what we're doing and I correlate it back to a 5-year startup, because our CEO and our chief revenue officer, Marco and Joe, they joined right about that time. And, since then, the whole business model has transitioned, and we run like a startup. We run very lean. That's thrilling, man. It's awesome when we just work together to solve problems. It's like, it's one of the most rewarding and fun places I've been. It's the hardest place I've been at the same time, but it's never been work. And that's what I love. Like, I'm an early riser. I'm one of those crazy guys. I get up probably 2:00 in the morning and but I'm working right away. And it never feels like, oh gosh, I gotta get out of bed because I have to do this. I get out because my mind's racing and I got a bunch of ideas, and these guys are challenging me on a daily basis to do bigger things, to be better, to think outside the box. And that's fulfilling. You know, it's opportunities like this, and it's working with the people like I am right now that make you realize that you don't ever have to retire, because you could do this forever because it's fun. And that's how I feel. These guys bring out the absolute best in me. They challenge us on a daily basis, and I thoroughly enjoy working with them. I'd put this leadership team up against any executive team that I've ever worked with, AWS, Amazon included.
Absolutely. When I started, I used to think that there was this goal of making a bunch of money so you could retire. And then when you actually fit in to what you want to do, I got to talk to this guy, I think his name was Adam, and he was one of the people that invented like video codecs and streaming technology that he sold to Google or something. I probably got that completely wrong, but you get the idea.
I would like to talk to him because
But he's like, I think he got several $100 million or something. And I did an interview with him. Super cool guy. They like to give away a bunch of their money and everything. And I was asking him, or he was asking me, what would I do if like he wrote me a big check and like I had infinite money, what would I do? And he said, it can't be in tech and it can't be the podcast.
Ooh,
and I said, so I had to think, and I was like, all right, so this is what I'd do. I'd buy like a sweet castle, giant mansion, right? Really cool, do all of that. And then I would pay the smartest people on the planet and fly them into my living room and have conversations with them.
That'd be good. I like that idea.
Just like tell Zuckerberg, hold on, Zuckerberg, Branson's up.
Yeah.
You know? And he's like, you somehow managed to turn that into a podcast. We don't have to record it.
Are you doing that right now? Yeah, no, I mean, but that just proves that what you're doing right now is what you love to do. Right.
Yes.
And that's part of why, like I said, I thoroughly enjoy this. Look, I commute every week. We're based out of Overland Park, Kansas, right outside of Kansas City. My family's still based up in Michigan. And I fly in on Sundays. I fly out on Thursday nights or Friday mornings. That's my drive to work, as I call it. And for a lot of people, that's like super intense. For me, it's awesome. Like, you know, and I'm working on the flights, and, you know, on Friday mornings, I typically get off, I land around 9 a.m. and it's, you know, drive or take a lift over to my house, and I go walk in the door, go right into my office. And then on Fridays, I'm usually not, you know, I'm still working till 6, 7 o'clock at night. You know, it makes it difficult because my kids play hockey and all that kind of stuff, but it's also rewarding because it doesn't bother me. There's problems.
But you get to their
solved.
Hockey games and stuff, right?
Oh yeah,
you get to the games. Okay.
Yeah, I get to the games. I've had to miss a couple away tournaments just because of logistics, but I get to the games. I'll miss the practices and things like that. And you know, it's probably better for me because I'll get out there and skate, and I have a terrible back, so me getting out there and skating anymore is probably not the best use of my time. But you know, it doesn't bother me. For a lot of people, that's more like a grind. Like, I have to work. Oh my God, I'm working till 6 or 7 o'clock on a Friday. I love it. Like, because it's not just busy work. I'm not on meetings. There's things that we're strategizing on. We're doing, you know, architecture reviews. We're thinking about new ways of doing things, and that's fulfilling. You know, you can't, like, what could you do? What goes wrong with that? Right. And sure, you know, money and all that stuff matters. But it's, to me, it's like value and valuable. You know, can I bring value? And I can, and am I valuable? You know, so it's like that reciprocity. And that's been for the last like 6 years, you know, after, you know, doing the kind of young person thing and saying, oh, there's all these things I want to achieve and I want more money. I came back to very easily that I need to be in positions where I bring value and am valued. And like, that's probably the most rewarding thing here. There's value every day that I can bring, but there's a trust that we have in the conversations when we're talking about problems or future growth opportunities where input matters. And it's not a matter of, you know, somebody's got a higher title than you or anything like that. It's like you're here to sit at the table. And for a long time, tech leaders really didn't sit at the table, right? They were just taking direction from the business because it was more of like an internal consulting agency where the business paid for the cost center that is technology. And in my mind, I love that you call it modern CTO because I've said this before, the CIO role is going away. That's less and less, it's going towards CTO because every company, whether you are a technology company or not, you are a technology company. And in order to do that, you need people who have been hands on keyboard. You need people who understand that. And that's not to discount any of the CIOs, but the CTO role is really what's taking over because they're expecting, that software engineering component to everything that we do. And it's an interesting shift. And, of course, now recently with, ChatGPT getting so much play, now everybody's thinking, oh, you guys won't even, we won't need you in a year. And I'm like, hold your horses. It's a lot of fun though to play with it. But, I just see things totally transitioning, and that's just in my career, I was, when I was growing up essentially in the business world, especially working at a place like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, our CIO wasn't a technologist. Our CIO was a business person. And it wasn't, until 2 years after that it went, into more of a technology driven organization. And I've seen that repeatedly where you get really good business people and they do very well. But it's a different industry. You need to have that technology background, but at the same time, us as technologists have to understand business. We have to get more adept at the financial components of what we do and understand, intricately what we do as a business in order to build the right products. And so it's a little bit of a transition where, the dominance of business over tech has flipped on its head, to tech over business. And so that's intriguing to me. And that makes this a hell of a lot of fun because I look at myself as a business technologist more so than anything else. I'm not one of those people that just says, hey, there's a new AWS service, we've got to go build that. It has to make logical sense, if you get my drift.
Well, I see it converging. So I see the business people having to become technologists and the technologists having to become business people.
Yeah.
I also have seen so much that it's hard for me to even talk about titles anymore.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's because I just say titles are the way that the team chooses to label themselves to the outside world, because it's so different, the different roles that you'll have. And to your point too about the business people, I used to sort of rag on some of the just collegiate business management type people because they were really bad at technology and I'd constantly see them making bad decisions. But I have run into like a pocket of them where they're so good at leading and putting people in the right places along with having that, MBA type financial aspect to it, that they have success. So I rag on them. Only 5% less now.
No, it's spot on. Part of what makes this company successful is the fact that Marco and Joe have expanded their horizons. They take pride in the fact that they learn about the technology as a complement to their expertise in the business side of things. And I enjoy that as well. And it makes us all stronger as a team because, I'll plead ignorance when they're talking about certain things that are related to the business, wanting to know more. And then they ask a lot of excellent questions around, why are you doing this? Why is it taking so long? What does it mean to do X versus Y? Are we just actually handling something today where, a calculated risk we took, it didn't come back to haunt us, but one of the risks that we knew we'd have to mitigate has arisen, right? But everybody knew about it. We had already discussed it. We already knew about it. And now it's just an opportunity for us to, go left and make sure we're taking care of it. But the benefit of that conversation was we already had it and it wasn't a gotcha. Everybody understood it. And we can do that as a collective at an executive level, which not a lot of places can do. And frankly, that's where the distrust comes in, right? Because just as much as if I don't extend my knowledge of the business and the financial components of it and or some of the business folks don't extend their knowledge on the technology, it becomes very difficult to build that trust, right? Because you don't really know what everybody else is saying, and it becomes somewhat confusing. And you always kind of you have this kind of always hesitancy to just execute. And I've seen that happen before, and it's not a fun situation to be in, because you're at that point in time, you're Mark will get a kick out of this. You're turning in more of a salesperson than you are, as an executive leader that's trying to get things done, because you're trying to, influence your direction, influence your way, as opposed to taking the business case and explaining it out to say, this is technologically why we should be doing this approach because of the return on the investment, right? The return to the business. And I'm a big champion of looking at ROI, using objective KPIs to measure, expected results and the actual results. I want the investment to prove valuable back to the business. I don't want to just do things that sound cool. Like it doesn't. At the end of the day,
we can figure out how to make them both happen, though.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
There's always that, but I'm cost conscious to that, right? No doubt in my mind, I have the most expensive organization in the company, right? I'm very, very honest about that. And most IT organizations are the most expensive to the company, but I also want to be really frugal on how I use that, right? And just saying I'm going to go build some stuff because it's a cool technology, that's not going to translate into the
Do people
return.
do that? Do people do that though?
Oh yeah.
Is it really happening a lot? They do it without business. They're just like, oh, we're just going to go do this because it's hot.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or they do it, beneath the covers, right? They do it under the covers, and it's like, oh yeah, I'll solve this problem. And the next thing you know, they're implementing new technology, new unproven technology, to try and solve that problem. And I've had some recency with this, that fails, right? Because you don't know enough about the technology for it to be scalable. You don't know enough about the technology you're using to understand its pros and cons. And then it takes more time than you originally estimated, because you estimated it based off of technology that that's great for an R&D function. Like, you should absolutely have an R&D function that's constantly looking at new innovative ways to make your software more performant, better efficient, solve better business problems. But with the speed that we're trying to run at, introducing new technology at the same time you're trying to solve instant or immediate business problems is in my experience been a disaster.
Well, yeah, I'm curious to dive into the R&D function a little bit, because when I first saw ChatGPT come out, I was like, and then I started talking with it, and then we started using it in our business, and then it was saving us half of our time in production. Because I don't know if you followed or if we've talked since then, but we started making shows for other companies. Do you know about that? Okay. So we do 15, 16 shows for other companies. And so we have producers, and they have to prep the episodes, the whole process you go through with Josh and everything that happens across all of our shows. Right.
Yeah.
And we started using ChatGPT to help us with the prep.
Oh, nice.
So we feed ChatGPT your bio, and we feed it the goals of the conversation. We feed it the notes that Josh takes from your prep call, feed it all of that information, and then we start probing it to come up with good questions and things like that, or give us ideas. It is phenomenal.
That's awesome.
It saves us so much time. So when I saw that, I said, okay, I'm always scared to go down rabbit holes, because to your point of not building stuff because it's cool, you have to be really disciplined there. And I think I've been lucky in my trajectory of my career, because the majority of things I was doing was with my money, that I kept it close as possible to the business thing. So I didn't really develop a bad habit. I never worked at a Fortune 500 company where I developed a habit of getting to be the king and just building stuff because I thought it would be cool. So whenever I hear other people say it, I'm always like, who are these people? Because I want to stay away from them.
Oh man, I'm with you. It's a completely different, when you have your own money and it's your own business, you think completely differently. And at the same time, working for Amazon makes you think like an owner, right? That's their leadership principles. I love the leadership principles. They matter to me to this day. somewhere in my desk really quick, I've got like the one pager of all the leadership principles, and I still talk like that, right? It's a big part of how I interview. It's a big part of how, we chat at the executive level. But, I want to be cognizant of the fact that there's the right time to introduce new technology, and then there's the wrong time. So it's a balance. If it's immediate, if you don't have the time, like for example, just to, use some rudimentary analogy, if you don't have time to do a spike story, right? You can't really look at introducing new technology into the workflow because there's going to be immediate risk to whether or not you can deliver. If you can, that's a different story. By all means, if you're looking at a problem that you're not really sure of the solution, and it does require you to actually learn some new technology or investigate something new to solve that problem, by all means, I'm 100% for that, and we definitely do that. Voice recognition is a really good example of that because part of our IVR prompting allows for voice recognition, and we use, it's no secret, we use Twilio as one of our partners, and they, out of the box, supply some voice recognition, but it's not working for us because we have obscure languages that just don't translate well, depending upon who's speaking them. And it caused a business problem for us because due to the fact that the voice recognition that Twilio was supplying us wasn't recognizing the language that somebody was speaking, it would default to a language not found, and then it goes through this completely other process that takes more time to connect a client to the interpreter. And so we're like, great, we got to fix voice recognition. And so we started digging into it, and it turned out that, by the way, Twilio does use Google as their backdrop, but it's not perfect. And if you teach yourself Google's proprietary language for responding to voice recognition, you can actually solve this problem yourself. So that's what we did. We said, it's a newer technology to us. We don't really know it, but this is the way that we have to solve the problem because we tried all the different things that we could find that were recommendations to tweak Twilio's voice recognition and their utilization of Google's voice recognition. So we're like, all right, I can't beat them, join them. So yeah, that was a part where we had a business problem. In order to solve that business problem, we had to pick up a new technology. It took longer than we wanted it to, but we're in the process now of releasing those changes. So absolutely, there's certain times where you can actually build for that case and scope out and project the times for that case. The stuff that I'm talking about is more along the lines of coming out of like AWS reInvent and seeing these fantastic new services that are there, and immediately, incorporating them into your next sprint. That to me is like the foolhardy approach. You got to do that. And your example is exactly like, it's a great balance. It's like, well, we've still got this stuff that we're doing over here, but we can play with ChatGPT to see if we can, optimize and save time. I love it. I mean, I frankly really want to get into using ChatGPT for code reviews, and documentation. Because that's the part every engineer hates.
Yeah. Because I think the Codex is the specific language model that was trained on all the different GitHub code, and ChatGPT is an offshoot from DaVinci. I've been learning a lot about it now because I just thought it was ChatGPT, and I realized, this is a small subset spinoff from DaVinci, and then there's these different models that are pre-trained neural networks, and then you can fine tune them and all of this information. I was just blown away by it. And the biggest reason is because I'm also a consumer, just as you are. So I go about my life. I see deep fake stuff, right? That's something I think every technologist has seen, obviously to varying degrees, the quality, but it's getting significantly better year over year.
Yeah.
And then because I'm in audio, we found this, oh man, it is so cool. It basically does a better job editing the audio quality than an audio engineer. Josh is going to hate me. Don't hate me, Josh. But we wanted to test this, right? Because Adobe bought this startup and they called it like Adobe Podcast now. I don't know if they're out of beta or whatnot, but we uploaded our worst background noise quality conversation we've ever had, the source of it, into the system. This wasn't one Josh edited, but we uploaded it into the system, and then we took the completed file that was edited by a human, and then we took what came out of the podcast app, and it was better than what the human had edited. And I was like blown away. So it obviously, that's just one small part of the workflow, is just improving the audio quality and reducing background noise. And you have to, clip for content. There's all these other things you have to do. But just to see that we're on the path. So here's my question to you.
Yeah.
When I saw the deep fake, I also at the same time saw this thing where I could upload several hours of my voice, which we have because these are separate tracks. And then it could mimic from text, like with inflection and all of this stuff, creepily accurate. And so I said, okay, well, they've got the video, and I've got hundreds of hours of video of me and my face and my movements. And I've got hundreds of hours of clean, crisp SMD7 audio. How long until I can make a digital twin of Joel that could run an interview with ChatGPT questioning and the other person doesn't know?
Wow.
Because I want to see if I could put myself out of business, right? Like, how do you do that?
So that's an interesting thing. That's the biggest fear, right? With AI, everybody's afraid of losing their jobs. And I was talking to somebody about this week. In fact, an interview candidate, I was talking to him about it, like, hey, how do you think AI is going to disrupt your industry? And I said, it will. There's no doubt about it. And for things that don't require legal terminology, medical terminology, it can be very disruptive right now. But what I said was, and it's exactly along the lines of what you just said, is this is only going to help us do other things, right? So, go back to like Multiplicity, the movie. What you just described as Multiplicity, you're like, well, crap, I can run my business based off of a deep fake of me with all this audio, asking the right questions. And at the same time, I'm going to be over, having family time or, doing the next adventure or the next, business that I want to start. That's how I look at it too, is, robots have been replacing humans forever. Yet, we talked about this earlier, yet we're at 3% unemployment, which is like unheard of. So it's not replacing everything. We're coming up with different ways to better use our time. And so I just look at AI as the quintessential automate the manual processes, right? Anything that's manual and repeatable, you should be looking at automating. That's a portion of it. Like, it's certainly a stretch, to say that. But if there's ways in which I can have ChatGPT or the next evolution of that start to replace, certain functions of my life, hell yeah, I'm all in, right? Because, my brain works 20 plus hours a day, and I'd love to be doing, I'd love to be putting my mind to other things with the knowledge that, I can execute more effectively by using a software system such as that to do some remedial tasks. Like, for
have you
example,
bounced ideas off of GPT?
Oh, I
like
have,
problem solving?
Yeah.
Did it come up with anything good or no?
It came up with some high level stuff. So I'd been toying with building something on my end. So I'm an avid collector. I'm a huge vinyl collector, and I used to always catalog everything. And I've gotten really lazy in my cataloging because I'm rarely home, and it's something that takes my focus because I'm super meticulous. Like, vinyl comes with inserts and all this kind of stuff, and the way that I catalog everything, I want it to be very specific about exactly what I have, including condition. And so I wanted to start developing a QR code system to where, as I receive it, it's basically an inventory management system. I can produce a QR code based off of the UPC, if there is one, or potentially based off of scanning the image of the record itself, and then automatically converting that into essentially the database record for my inventory on an AWS S3 bucket. And so I asked ChatGPT, I said, build this for me. And I was really shocked at how detailed and step driven it got. But in the matter of 15 seconds, I had 25 different steps of, how to go about configuring it in the console, recommendations on the specific AWS services that they would use, that you should use to be able to build it. And from a high level architecture, it was pretty damn accurate. And that was a pretty ambiguous ask, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I was digging it. And that's why I said, that's why I started looking at it. I'm like, well, crap, like let's start using this as code reviews. Code reviews is one of my biggest blockers. It's a resource constraint. Nobody wants to do it. It's administrative work. If I could use that as my code review engine, I'd save, at least 15 hours a week of engineering productivity. So that's where I want to get into it. And then plus, like I said, documentation is always a challenge. So, I'd love to be able to just automatically produce documentation for our architecture and software.
Good documentation.
Yeah, good documentation, right?
Good documentation.
That basically just automatically generates, a knowledge base for any engineer that's coming on board. And it's like, by the way, go over here. Done. You don't have to worry about, spending time with another engineer, saving me some pair programming time, all that kind of stuff. So I see definite opportunities of incorporating that into our natural workflow.
So when I saw this and played with it, I had a week, no shame, of like the sky is falling.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Of course.
And because I'm very like single-minded at times. And so I want to figure out like, how do I rationalize what's going on around me and then figure out how to take action and move myself forward. Right.
Yeah.
It took me, usually I can do that in minutes or in hours or in a day, but this took me basically a week. And so here's my takeaway from it. It's an advanced technology that is doing amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to continue to progress faster because now we have better tools to help us build better tools. So that's just going to continue to progress even faster. The technology is not where it's at today for off the shelf deep fake interaction. I maybe 3 to 5 years it'd get there, or if we really tried hard and put an engineering team on it, we could get something close and progress it. But then I fell back to principles. And so the way I've dealt with all of this is the following. I said, every time from my first project in the early 2000s, where I helped with some real estate accounting software and some other types of real estate software, what I saw was when you went in and there was a group of people, whoever was curious and was like, hey, what is this? What's going on? They're the ones who stayed when the department got optimized, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Right? They learned how to use the tool.
Yeah.
We don't want to have an on-site situation. We want to train up, we're putting software into a company. We want to train up experts inside the company.
Yeah, for sure.
We find the 2 or 3, it would optimize the department. 20 people end up, moving elsewhere. And then those 2 or 3 people stay and they run the system now.
Yep.
And so that's the principle I have seen my entire life. It's whoever's curious, whoever starts playing with the technology, whoever starts understanding it, those are the people that stay regardless of how much stuff gets wiped out.
I don't disagree with you on that. I think humans are lazy. Think about that, right? Like we're all trying to make our lives easier. And this is all stuff that makes our lives easier. And you can go back to everything. Go to the car, right? Went from horses to cars. Everybody thought we were nuts. It was to make our lives easier, right? And that's the success of a business is based off of, are you really solving a problem that matters? And this solves time problems. And again, I like what you said. Like it's a curiosity thing. And that's one leadership principle that we specifically brought over from Amazon's learn, be curious. Are you constantly learning? And something that takes work away from me enables me to learn other new things. So I don't fear it as much as I want to see it evolve. I think the biggest challenge with AI right now, and it's still, it's easy to prove this, right, is the voice recognition component of it. It's the ability to actually have a verbal conversation. Typing things in is obviously producing results. You could look at Google as the big game changer in that, because back in the day when Google first came out, it could take 5 words and give you exactly what you were looking for, right? But when it comes to voice recognition and being able to have that verbal conversation, I think that when that happens, that's when this is a mature technology, and it's not far away, right? To your point around your explanation of that, the audio software and being able to like look at inflection and facial recognition, we're not that far away. And deepfakes obviously prove that's getting there, at least from the one-way conversation. I don't know about the actual receiving of the of the verbal communication and then being able to produce like a conversation. Oh, I've tried with Alexa. Don't,
Yeah.
she's not that great of a conversationalist.
There is somebody that had a Chat GPT interview another Chat GPT.
No kidding.
I think they did it on a podcast. I wasn't sure because I didn't listen, but I read some of the transcript, and they were basically saying, hey, act like an expert here, and then have this view, and then act like an expert here, have that view. And then they had them have a short conversation. And I was just blown away by it. I mean,
it is really cool. My Marco loves it. He was all in on it, and it got me more intrigued with it because originally I was kind of like, oh yeah, all right, cool. And then I started to play with it, and it's super disruptive right now for education. People having that write their page, their documents and things like that. But
it's amazing.
Like I said, I just again lazy, right? Yeah. Our cultures we're a natural lazy race. We want to only have to do what we have to do, and so that's what we're doing. We're developing software that helps us solve problems of shit that we don't want to do. Pardon my French. If you have to edit that out, it's okay. But nobody wants to write documents anymore. So
I've been watching another one that's curious to me is they've got these cooking hands, like the hands that can cook, and they will take chefs and they'll have them record the dishes and then they can play it back. And when I saw those hands, I saw Jeff Bezos a few years ago. That's when I got introduced to them. He put on these gloves and then the hands similar to those very expensive surgery machines.
Yeah.
And so I said, it's just a matter, we don't even need to get to humanoid before you get a Roomba with a pole on it and then a set of hands. I mean, you could go help so many people in like their later stages of life with
for sure.
common chores and all of that. And I just imagine this call center, there'll be these call centers of these humans that are operating these remote Android type things inside of different people's houses as a service. It's like you got your house cleaner,
for
and
sure.
There it is. Yeah.
Why not? I mean, not to go from that to something completely opposite, but I mean, warfare has already been changed by this stuff.
Oh yeah.
The fighter pilot is almost a non-existent role anymore. You've seen all these movies, you've read all this stuff. Like most of this is handled by a video game controller in Vegas. And so you see that all along. And it is those types of advances. I don't mean to like compare war to natural days, but it's a huge advancement in technology. And again, what makes our lives simpler? How can we do more with our available time? And that's just what we're trying to accomplish here. Like if it becomes a possibility for me to leverage ChatGPT in a medical conversation, I absolutely want that a part of my system. Absolutely. Because I'll get more out of it. It could be potentially more reliable, more consistent, right? And it would save me capacity. It would allow me to do other things. It would enable me to scale countlessly, right? Not worrying about finding all these different people across the world that speak in particular languages, but instead, I've got one source who can communicate in 300 plus languages. I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense. And then again, like I said, I don't look at machines as replacing humans. I look at machines or artificial intelligence saving humans time to go do other things.
So if you take it to the ultimate, let's stay on the human as lazy path, and we create technology to help us do things faster and be lazier, which is great. Let's take that all the way to the end, hundreds of years into the future. If we were to look back and say, what are the humans building? We're all building towards something. I build a component, then you use my component to build something better, and then someone else uses that to build something better, and we just keep layering and layering and layering. When we get to the end, everything's been done. What do you think that thing is that we've built?
Cyberdyne? That's a really difficult question. Wow, I never even thought of that. I mean, you're getting into some like space age stuff to where we've probably built a community where we could live anywhere in our universe, or any universe for that matter. It doesn't matter. And if we're really truly human, right, and our goal is to survive, that's the other thing. We're lazy and we want to survive. It would be basically building Earth to where it sustains itself, and then we've created a planet that doesn't need humans anymore, and then we go find the next planet that we have to build this all over again. I mean, that's common. If you look through history, right, all the different civilizations, all the different advanced civilizations that could do a lot of the things that we were doing now that, for some reason or other disappeared. I mean, why not? That's what Bezos and Richard Branson and Elon Musk are doing right now to try and, get into the space race and go, build a habitat on Mars. It's knowing that what we've done here may be at its max, and then now we just got to go do the same thing somewhere else. So I just Star Trek-y a bit,
Yeah. It's a bit heady. Well, because
sure.
I first got this a couple years ago when I was watching some, I don't know, it's outside, and I was watching some ants build some stuff. And I just thought to myself, popped in my head, I said, I wonder if I walked up to that ant and I tapped it on the shoulder and I said, do you know like the bigger thing that you're building here? Or do you just really like to go from A to B because of whatever reasons you've decided you like to go from A to B? And then I looked into it a little bit more and I came across these ant colonies that build these massive underground structures. And people will pour the concrete into them and then extract them. And I'm like, they know how to do this stuff. This is crazy. They're clearly all working together, but they're not connected, right? If there's hundreds of thousands of these ants and they're on different sides, they're building something together, but they're not connected. And to me, it's fascinating because I want to know, where is that information encoded? Like it's gotta be somewhere, right? Is it, I think
some kind of neural transmission that they have that we don't, for sure. Yeah. There's an extra
I think
sensor.
we have it. I think, okay, look, I'm going to get crazy here. All right. And then we can wrap up. This is probably the craziest thought that I share publicly. I think I'll give you an example first. If we go back to the 1900s, right? And I were to tell you that there's this light that humans can't see, bugs can. It's this light, and you would be like, you're crazy, right? But it's infrared, and it always existed around us, and it took us time to get the right technology.
Yep.
I think it's a stupid position to take to imagine that we've detected every possible field around us.
Right. There's way more than the five senses, right?
Right. So I think we'll get there. I think we'll get to a point where we ultimately create some sort of technology or figure out how we're all connected in a different way than just like, oh, we're just meat and bone bags. We're walking around.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's already a lot of published documentation that says that we use a small portion of our brains, right?
Yeah.
So think about the fact that we might use 10 to 15% of our brain. How do we untap that? That to me is also game changing, right? If we can figure out ways to untap the rest of our brains, I like to consider myself smart, but shit, if I'm only using 15% of my brain, man, I wonder what else I could do with that rest of the 85%. And there's got to be ways to do it. I mean, look at all the geocoding or, and the DNA decoding that we've been able to accomplish already. Oh God, I had it CRISP.
CRISPR.
CRISPR is awesome. Again, could be used in bad ways, but also could fix a lot of, genetic diseases in people to extend people's lives. So it could help us cure cancer. That's an amazing technology that I've been staying in tune with for quite a while. And that's, in a way, it's a start of being able to, to tap into unused portions of the human, the body and brain, because we're very complex people. And, what is it that we can invest in? What is it that we can do to pull even more of that out? There was that movie. It was an Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep movie. God, I can't remember the title of it, but they're in their afterlives, and they're reviewing their lives on camera, right, and showing all of their fears and stuff like that. And the only way they could pass through is if they proved that they were fearless. But everybody in this world that was the business people in this world were utilizing 40 to 80% of their brains, and they were that much smarter, that much more advanced thinkers, that able to see ahead of certain the reactions or the effects of causes. And that's part of what intrigues me as well. It's like, could you think about what could we do to be able to free up our minds? And again, going back to ChatGPT, that could be a reason, right? Because we don't have to think about, some of the simpler tasks. We could just use that to respond to simpler tasks, so that we're using the complexity of our brains to actually go solve less trivial problems. And so that gives us our capabilities to go back in and, really solve cancer, look at ways to produce clean water for the entire globe, get rid of, plastics and come up with creative ways to recycle, pull carbon emissions out of the out of the air, and figure out a way to recycle those as well and use those as fuel or power. Those are things that are all taking place right now, but they're so small that we're not able to make the impact that we could. And if we just were able to free our brains up and not worry about some of the remedial tasks that we deal with on a daily basis, maybe we could do that stuff.
Yeah. Oh man, what else do we want to get out there to the world? Anything else? Go work at Propio. Is that how I say it? Propio?
Yeah, you got it. Anything else? Like, going back to the start of our conversation, and I said this before, and I've posted this before. If you're defeated because you got laid off, ignore it. Use the layoff situation as an opportunity to find what you love and want to do, or reinvent yourself. Reflect on yourself. A good colleague of mine was saying some similar things, like, take a moment to reflect. Why was it you? And don't beat yourself up about it. Just take it as an opportunity to learn from your past and create a new version of yourself. Like, I've reinvented myself several times, and I'm very much one of those people who's reflecting all the time, and I don't have regret. I just wish I could do some things over again, right? And so, I've been in that position before, where you come to an end of an employment opportunity, and you kind of are at that crossroads, and you start to question your confidence, your self-worth. And every time I've been in that situation, I've just used it as a chip on my shoulder to go prove that, nope, it wasn't me. I can do this. I can keep going. So just use it as a springboard. Use it as an opportunity to go be a better version of yourself. And, from that, like, come work with us. Come be a part of something that does matter to people. Just because you got you're out of an opportunity with the big guys, the Amazons, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Metas, it doesn't mean that your impact is gone. In fact, you'll make more impact coming to work with a small startup like us. So start to consider that. Take a leap of faith. Move into a region of the country that is completely new to you, and go work with really smart people who just want to make things better. Because I just think that's the tone. That's been the common theme of our conversation today, is look around you, look at all the different tools that you have at your availability to just make your life better, your life simpler, and to free your mind to go learn other things. There's tons of opportunities out there. So give us a call. Come help us.
You crushed it, man. That's why we're friends, because you're awesome at what you do.
I love doing this, man.